Hello there fellow acolytes of Sega Saturn, and welcome to a special video for the end of the year. This is my first annual Sega Saturn Awards show where I'll be dishing out some arbitrary awards. These will be for Saturn games that I've played this year. It doesn't include games where I've just popped them in to grab some footage for like a gems video or something. These are games that I've properly played throughout the course of the year. There are going to be 10 categories in total, and I'll be covering these over 2 videos, 5 each. And the rules that I've laid out are as follows. So as I mentioned before, only games I've played in 2018. There's going to be 1 award per game. Some games may deserve more than 1 award, but fact is one title could win about half of these awards, so I'm just narrowing it down to a single one to make things a bit more interesting. And there's only going to be 1 game per franchise. Again, it's done just to mix things up. Right, well now I've covered the rules, I'm going to get rolling with these awards. I'm not going to be tackling this alone though. I have Marduk here, my cat, who will be joining me for these awards. So sit back, enjoy the awards, and I hope you like them. Alright, let's get on. Oh boys, first category, and I'm going to have to start it by defending my choice. Now, most disappointing doesn't necessarily represent a bad game. Not at all. What it does represent is how a game stacked up based on my expectations. I never played Guardian Heroes before this year, but I'd actually heard about the hype from many people, and they call it the best beat 'em up on the Saturn. Having played the likes of Die Hard Arcade before, this seemed to be a pretty big statement. I'm a massive beat 'em up fan, so that got me pretty excited. It's also a game done by one of my favourite game companies, Treasure. Whilst I'd never played any of their Saturn games prior to this, I had played their games on the Mega Drive, N64 and GameCube. Each one was its own little innovation. They tend to create these very unique gaming experiences that are an absolute delight to play. Even each Treasure game seems to be different from the last. The only thing I found in common is that they have absolutely amazing and frequent boss fights. Some of their titles may take a bit of time getting used to, like Dynamite Headdy or Mischief Makers, but usually when you finish the games, you're extremely satisfied with the experience. And then I played Guardian Heroes. I love the art style of it, and I have to admit that the different attacks and spells available are very fun and satisfying to use. They do add a lot of depth to the combat that aren't seen in many other beat-em-ups, apart from maybe like Shadow of Mystara. It also adds optional paths and a levelling up system, again like Mystara, and these are all very well implemented. It gives the game, quite a lot of extra replayability. So, what was disappointing? Well, one of the main gimmicks for starters. In Guardian Heroes you need to switch between 3 different planes of combat. That in itself isn't necessarily a bad idea, because it does solve one of the problems in the genre, where you can't properly align yourself to the bad guys, and you attack and you don't hit them properly. The problem is that you need to jump in between them, and there's quite a slow animation of your character jumping. The enemies can also jump backwards and forwards too, meaning that you'll sometimes jump to where the enemy is, they'll jump away, and then it just becomes a whole pain in the ass. The enemies too are kinda lackluster. Not just the main enemies, many beat-em-ups have the same stock grunts over and over again, but the bosses. The main enemies, as I say, are fine, but the bosses are a real big disappointment, especially for a Treasure game. When they do appear, they're mainly just kind of attack until dead affairs with no real pattern or strategy. Even older games like Streets of Rage had bosses with distinct patterns for you to take down, and for a company that usually does amazingly well thought out bosses that are real interesting to fight, these were just kind of I expected more bosses, and I expected them to have fun kind of attack patterns for you to work out and exploit. Even with some of their other games, they tend to mix up the gameplay stylists so that when you're doing a boss, it's a kind of a different style of game, just to kind of throw something different at you. This did none of that, and for a Treasure game, that was a big surprise, and that's why Guardian Heroes was the most disappointing game of the year. Far from the worst, I've definitely played worse games this year, but it was the most disappointing for me because I hoped it would be something special. What is a surprising game? Well, I suppose it's kind of the opposite of disappointing. It's a game where I go in, not really expecting much, and then was actually pleasantly surprised. For me, that was Alone in the Dark 2, Jack is Back. I never properly played an Alone in the Dark game before this. I played a little bit of the game on the Xbox 360, which was, garbage. The old games as well looked pretty shitty from what I've seen, and the second game doesn't have the best reputation, at least the version on the Sega Saturn. People criticise the controls, the visuals, the loading, and just the entire game itself. The reputation seems to imply that the game's borderline unplayable. So I bought the game on a whim, basically for Halloween, and having beaten the game, I can say that all the criticism is unwarranted. The controls are weird and seem to be very counterintuitive, at least at first. It took me a while to get used to the control scheme, but you do get used to it. It's strange, sure, but it's not unusable, it's just different. The game also has quite wonky hit detection, but again, it's something you get used to. It has unlimited saves where you can save whenever you want, and it's not very difficult, so it's something that you can overcome if you want to. The gameplay does feel pretty dated, especially as interacting with objects is largely done through menus. I can imagine that people accustomed to modern games could have a tough time dealing with this game. However, if you're fond of old school survival horror games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, then I'm sure you'll be able to adapt and appreciate the game easily enough. The story too is campy and silly. It's not really scary, but the game knows this and plays with it quite well. It's full of charm, and I think that old school horror fans, they'll be able to find enjoyment in the game, even if it's not perfect. This category doesn't really need much of an introduction. I'm sure most people are fully aware of how important music can be in a game, and the Saturn certainly had the capability to produce some amazing quality music. The hardware really could produce some amazing sounds, and music was only really limited by the imagination of the composer. I played a lot of games this year that had some excellent music, but Akamojo Dracula X, commonly known as Symphony of the Night, definitely stands on top of the pile as the winner for this category. Akamojo Dracula X was composed by Michiru Yamane, and it's a delight to listen to. I'm not going to describe the music, so instead, for the rest of this category, I'm just going to give you a selection of the music to do the speaking for me. The Saturn had some raw hardware power and was made to be a bit of a powerhouse. It had two graphics chips, the VDP-1 and VDP-2. They could work in tandem, dealing with the main image and the background respectively. The VDP-2 could also fulfill many other roles that the first one had problems with, like creating transparencies in order to maximise the visual beauty that a game could offer. The problem was that Saturn was notorious for being quite difficult to program for, and a lot of devs just stuck to the one chip because they didn't really know how to use it, or they didn't think it was worth the time investment, seeing as though the Saturn had quite limited popularity. As such, the Saturn became known for being a 2D powerhouse, since creating good looking and good performing 3D games was a lot more difficult. It was still possible though, as many other games proved, but 2D was basically where it's at. There were many games I played this year that looked stunning. Some of them looked fantastic in 3D, others looked great in 2D. My pick for best visuals though goes to Elevator Action Returns. The original Elevator Action game puts you in the role of a spy as you infiltrate buildings. This pseudo-sequel puts you in the role of a secret agent instead, and to complement that they match it with an 80s aesthetic that for me worked perfectly. It starts the game with an anime style cutscene and then throws you into this breathtaking world. Everything from the animation to the backdrop looks amazing, and they did a really good job making it look so nice. It's filled with a lot of nice touches as well that add to the charm. For example, at the start of the second level, you're riding in a helicopter towards a building and you smash through the glass wall. It's over the top, but it just adds to the awesomeness. In fact, everything from the enemy's death animations to the fire caused from the grenades looks absolutely amazing. The game is truly a visual delight, and that's why I pick it for this award. What is a reliable game? A reliable game is one that you keep going back to. It may not be the best game ever, but it contains a certain something that just drags you back. It's addictive, you just want to play it again and again, even if it's just for like a quick 10 minutes. For me, that game is Segundo Arcatoa Sandoaro. I'm probably not pronouncing the game right, but I have to say that I do love this game quite a lot. It was a game I picked up on a whim just because it was so cheap and looked like, you wouldn't need much knowledge of Japanese to get through it. And what I got was quite a delightful arcade game, jam-packed with a lot of entertaining micro games. The way I basically describe this to people is that it's essentially WarioWare on the Saturn, but predating WarioWare by about 7 years or so. You work your way through a nonsensical storyline, and in order to beat the baddies you need to complete a minigame. Each minigame has basic instructions in front of you to give an indication of what you need to do, and you have to figure out quickly and complete it in order to proceed. Of course, the challenge lessens somewhat after you know what to do, but there's still so many micro games that will still keep you on your toes while you try and remember what you need to do for that specific one. The vast majority of the micro games are fun to play, and there will be hardly ever any frustrating moments that you'll want to play this game again and again. Whether you're playing in single player or multiplayer, and multiplayer is a blast to play, alone or with a friend, this game will just sink its hooks into you and keep you coming back. You can dip into this game for like 2 minutes or 2 hours, always have fun. That's why this is my most reliable game this year. So, there we have it, the first 5 awards in this year's Sega Saturn Awards show. Many thanks to Marduk, who's now run off, unfortunately. But I'll see you, and maybe Marduk will see you too, the next time for the final 5 awards. Thanks all for watching, bye.